Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and update 1.28.1 is here, and with it brings some very tasty buffs to some of the most popular tank destroyer tech trees in the game. The first tanks that I'm going to be looking at are not the tier 10s, I'm going to be looking at the tier 9s, where I think the matchmaking is even more favorable, more enjoyable, and some of the vehicles I'm going to be playing today are going to be absolute classics. Starting with the T30. This vehicle has received some substantial buffs to both of its guns. It now has a 120mm that has 450 alpha damage, whereas previously that 120mm had 400 alpha damage. Its rate of fire has pretty much remained the same, which means that the vehicle just has very, very nice damage per minute now if you are using the stock gun on that tank. However, I still think you should go with the 155 because that's what's special about this tank, is that big gun just punishing. The 155mm means that with AP shells, oh, I tried to slam one in against the T69 at the start there, are able to overmatch all 50mm plates, which allows this thing to just absolutely club through some angles that opponents really don't expect it to. For example, on the top of tanks. Like on a 60 TP, for example. This thing can overmatch a Super Concrete, it can overmatch a 60 TP, and not a lot of those tier 10 heavies that like to expose themselves that much realize it. You can punish them heavily for it. So when you have 750 alpha damage on this tank, you really don't have to shoot many shells in a battle to be able to achieve your goals. And my goal was on the day of the release, which was Wednesday, that I was going to get my third mark of excellence on the T30, my third mark of excellence on the Jagdtiger, and my third mark of excellence on the 704, while all starting on them at roughly about 90%. Did I manage it? Spoilers. We'll see. We'll see by the end of the video today. And you're going to be seeing some highlights from games today in those vehicles for this one-day play session, which was on the 15th of April. Although I'll be releasing this video a little bit in the future, as I'm now in Japan, or I might be in Japan soon. I don't know when I'm exactly going to release this video, but I'm pre-preparing content so that you can all still have a little bit of QuickyBaby even when I'm out of the country. So a little bit of a misplay here. I was thinking, is this guy going to overturn his tracks? And I really wanted to track him and lock him down there. Instead, I just have to go for the lower plate, which is a little bit of a pain, but oh well, it happens. So a lot of you might be asking, okay, Scrubs, you've talked about your holiday plans, you've talked a little bit about why you're featuring these vehicles today, but you haven't actually talked about what's happened to the tanks. Well, for the T30, apart from the 120mm, the 155 got buffed as well. Firstly, the turret traverse dispersion has been buffed from 0.24 to 0.22. So that's just like roughly about an 8% buff. So it's almost like the equivalent of having a little rotation device on this vehicle, or an experimental turbo on this tank, without actually having to have invested into it. Come on, BZ. Oh no, the BZ misses the VK, and is that going to come back to haunt me? Well, we'll have to see. In addition to that, Wargaming have also improved the reverse speed on this tank from 10 kilometers an hour to 12, which is lovely, because that means that you can take the field mod now that improves the camo rating of the vehicle to completely change the vehicle's class to being actually quite a sneaky tank destroyer from being a horrendous tank destroyer, without making the reverse speed horrendous. They've also improved the power to weight ratio from it was 860, but it was actually 909 effective, up to 930 on this vehicle as well, so a nice engine power improvement there. The power to weight ratio now 14 on this tank, whereas previously, well, 14.45, where it was 14 before. And also the tank traverse up to 25 from 22. And to say that actually it's at the top of the screen, that miss from the BZ176 wasn't frustrating is an understatement. While I absolutely clubbed my way through that T95, was that the same T95 who was down below? Looks like I just shot them this entire game. No, it's actually not the same T95 that was down below. I was thinking, did he just teleport up here? I know T95s are fast these days, but they're not that fast, right? But unfortunately, that BZ176 missing that VK means that I take another 2 shots. And so while this tank has the biggest of guns, while it has awesome turret armor, it has a horrible hull. It's still got a tier 7 hull. Wargaming haven't buffed that. But yeah, so tank traverse is improved, reverse speed is improved, engine power is improved, turret traverse dispersion is improved, and if that's not all, it's also got a more healthy engine that you won't have to worry about. So all in all, just really big buffs. And I'd like to question, did this tank really need buffs? I personally think this was an absolute fine vehicle. And while the buffs that they've given it aren't going to instantly make it extreme and now it's broken overpowered, it's not like they increase the alpha damage or the rate of fire or the aim time or the accuracy, at least for the big gun, right? They definitely help. And they make the T30, which already had quite an enjoyable playstyle, if you'd like to hit hard and be flexible, to now just be a little bit more convenient. Oh man, look at that. This is turning into a big game for a tier 9 TD, right? Up to 6,000 damage dealt. The 3 mark requirements on this vehicle on Wednesday were 3,300, so it's a lovely swing within every regard. And hopefully, I'm just hoping that we'll be able to get some more in. And again, as I said, with the final field mod on this vehicle, you can actually improve the camo rating by 5%, which takes this tank from being pretty much more like a heavy tank with regards to its camo rating to being more like a larger medium. And so if you combine that with a concealment crew, yeah, what you can do with this vehicle with sneaking around, or more importantly using bushes, usually on ridgelines, it's absolutely massive. It really does completely change this vehicle. So for Wargaming to improve the reverse speed, because unfortunately when you take that final field mod on this tank, you have a choice. You can either get 5% camo or you can get 2 kilometers an hour reverse speed. Well, now you don't have to worry. And if you were some weirdo who previously actually took the reverse speed because you worried about this thing falling back on a ridgeline, I thoroughly recommend switching to the other way. Because you will have, it will just mean that instead of being like a heavy tank with regards to your camo, you will be more like a large medium. And that can make all the difference for you getting around. And as I said, all the difference for you managing to be sneaky and work those bushes and to stay hidden, such as on Muravanka, for example. So all in all, nice big buff to the T30. And it's gone from being a tank that was good, and I would have positively, absolutely recommended it in World of Tanks, to now being a very good tank, a very good vehicle. It just makes me question as to why Wargaming really needed to buff this thing. I think it's probably just because they want to have more people playing more World of Tanks and grinding through tech trees and collecting all of the vehicles. And today, you're not just going to be collecting T30 gameplay from Uncle Scrubs. Let's go see what we do with the buffed Jagdtiger. So the original top-tier German tank destroyer also received some love in this patch as well. Let's make the Jagdtiger roar again. And how has Wargaming exactly buffed the Jagdtiger? Well, as you might see, this thing is a lot faster than it previously was. They've improved the engine power from 740 up to 830. That means the power to weight ratio has gone from less than 10 to pretty much exactly 11. They've also improved the tank traverse on this vehicle. They've improved the engine health as well, which is at the front, which is very nice, so your engine doesn't get knocked out nearly as much. And also, and they didn't put this, at least on the Tanks GG isn't showing this because it's just a raw armor value, they've improved the upper hull by 15 millimeters, I believe. But it has come at a little bit of a cost, and that is that they're not calculating this plate as being very, very thick from the side anymore. I don't know what that Waffenträger is doing, but he's feeding me hit points at the start of the battle. And so this means now that while previously on the Jagdtiger, you couldn't really just sit in a position like this and just hide that lower plate, now you can. Now you have 250 millimeters of armor here, which when you use your 7 degrees of gun depression can get quite effective. And previously, while this upper hull would be very vulnerable against the heat rounds, it's now actually enough that if you use it in a matchup like this, that you will be able to absorb some shells. So it looks like that Waffenträger didn't like the matchup here, because they went over to drown themselves, but at least we managed to farm a few of their hit points before they managed to do that. And so this is just a position that previously the Jagdtiger just wouldn't really sit in. It couldn't really do this because they could just go through the hull. And now we see that this IS-5, well, they're going through us sometimes. They're not going through us all the time. They've bounced 2 shells, they've penned 2 shells. And the thing is that when the Jagdtiger hits for 560 and has the rate of fire that this tank has, that's okay. Unfortunately, fumbling around like a cat in water there. Not very graceful as we managed to go around the corner, but hopefully we'll punish this IS-5 some more. There we go. They ricocheted off our upper hull. What is this? We're actually bouncing shells off this upper hull, whereas previously it was pretty much only about kind of like 230 millimeters of effective. Now, you're probably favored to be able to ricochet. So it's wonderful, because the Jagdtiger's gone from being a tank where your opponents could easily pen the lower plate and pen the upper plate fairly easily as well, to now being a tank where they can still really easily pen the lower plate. The lower plate's absolutely trash, but now in a position where you can kind of expose that hull armor. So if you do use some of your gun depression and you do avoid hiding that, well, you do avoid exposing that lower plate, then you can do some really good stuff with the Jagdtiger. And this thing, it's gone with the speed buff as well. It's gone from being a tank where it was pretty much just a juggernaut to now being a tank where it's more of like a bruising fast vehicle as well that can be able to get into position quick enough to be able to deliver these shells. And then what you realize is you got 2,300 hit points if you use a durability device on this vehicle, and you've got 3,000 base damage per minute. So this thing is just an absolute monster of the battlefield. And it's very interesting to me that Wargaming would just buff these tanks that I thought were pretty fine inside the game. But if you like them, if you liked them before, you're gonna like them even more. And if you didn't like them before, well, now's a better time than ever to get into some tier 9 TDs and go after your opponents. And yeah, just look at this. Now we're plodding along at the same speed as a Carnarvon. The Jagdtiger's always meant to be a very slow vehicle. And with our adrenaline rush procking now, oh baby, we got some, our scary DPM has become even more scary. And can we expose ourselves to this G-Salt? If he's firing gold, we're gonna struggle. Or are we? Wow, he's got like 320 millimeters of pen, but he's actually ricocheting off us there. Unfortunately, we don't manage to hit them either. The gun handling, it's okay. It's not the best on this tank, but it's not the worst. Is he telling me no, or has he just lost his mind? Oh, talk about losing my mind. I think I'm about to lose my tank to these all the artillery here right now. And just hoping that we can get an extra shot into the Scorpion. That's an easy hit. Well, apparently it's not an easy hit. I was a bit bewildered by that, considering I was trying to hit my 3 mark in this tank. But there we go. Nice. Good job. Easy, easy, easy. 6,000 damage. The 3 mark on this vehicle, at least on Wednesday, was at 3k. And I can tell you it won't be 3k for very long, because this buff, it's really, really helped this tank out. That upper hull actually ricocheting things. Lower plate still absolutely trash though. And let me clarify, it has come at the expense of previously, though this was a huge amount of armor because it counted as like a big welded plate on top. But now that just counts as side armor. So Wargaming have like they've streamlined, I guess is the best way to say it, the way that this armor model is. So that means that from the side, you can actually pen here, and you can pen here on the Jagdtiger, whereas that previously wasn't possible. But I think that's a trade that I'm willing to make to actually have armor where I can effectively use it. And yeah, the Jagdtiger, it's gone from being a super heavy kind of like juggernaut to now actually being just a very dangerous tank that can actually get around the battlefield to deliver its damage per minute and even avoid just using its massive hit points to weather the storm to pump out that DPM. So the final tier 9 tank that I'm going to be covering today is the original tier 9 Soviet top tier tank destroyer. It's the Object 704 that of course now leads on to the Object 26A. This thing has always been just terrifying for me. As someone who started, my first ever tech tree was the German heavies. Jagdtigers were terrifying, 704s were terrifying, and the T30, well that was terrifying, but it was an American heavy at the time, right? Originally a tier 10 American heavy. So it's crazy now that all of these vehicles that I don't think have truly ever been adjusted, but have always been scary, are now really getting their teeth back. The Object 704, how exactly has it been buffed? Well, everyone knows that this gun was always super troll, right? This is the original BL-10 that you have, that you used to have on the ISU 152. Now it's an Object 704 exclusive. Now, Wargaming have improved the aim time of this tank from 2.9 to 2.7. They've improved the accuracy from 0.39 to 0.36, so now you can actually snipe in this vehicle. They've also improved the top speed from 37 to 40. The reverse speed from 13 to 14, The power to weight ratio has gone from 740 effective up to 800. The tank traverse as well from 22 to 28. So previously this thing was like this slow lumbering beast that got into position and just dumped shells. To now, look at it, it's actually agile. You can actually get around. Wargaming, funnily enough, have actually lowered the engine health on this tank, but improved the track health, so that can be helpful for getting into position. And so, I want to come to a little bit of a downside to these changes, and that is that I'm not sure how all of you feel about World of Tanks, but there's one thing that I know for sure, and that is the game is getting faster. The way that the snowballs happen are getting more and more brutal. And I would argue that one of the reasons why these snowballs happen and why the game is getting faster and why it's kind of getting more brutal is because tanks like this, the Object 704, should never really be in this kind of a position, right? Back in the day, these tanks, they couldn't take turbos, they didn't have the second field mod, which improves the ground resistances, and a tank like this didn't have the engine power, the top speed, or the traverse speed, right? And now we're getting to a stage in 2025 where it's not enough that Wargaming have been putting in pieces of equipment that just make every tank faster if you choose to use them. It's not enough that they've just taken field mods that basically make it so that you just get faster and there's no downside on the Object 704 and all of the tank destroyers. You're an idiot if you don't take the track health and the ground resistances. Just make yourself 15% faster. Why wouldn't you? And so we're getting to the stage now where it's not just the lights and it's not just the mediums that can get forwards and do really funky, cheeky stuff like you see me doing now. You know, it's the tier 9 tank destroyers, right? This vehicle with its base speed of 40, even without a turbo, is quick enough, agile enough to get forwards. And if you've got all the field mods on it, it's an incredibly sneaky tank. I think you can have about 30% camo while you're driving around, which is what tank destroyers are not meant to be able to achieve because of the field mods that this vehicle can take. And, you know, while you don't have the best of armor, the armor on the Object 704 has never been terrible. If you just keep wiggling, just keep praying, try to use that mantlet, and stay alive for hopefully long enough to be able to club the new player who's actually using that 120mm on the T30 with that 450 alpha. And so, in the first 4 minutes of this game, we have created a 15-1 battle, and we got ourselves, 8,600 combined. So, spoilers. I managed to 3-mark all 3 of these vehicles. It was very easy to do on patch day, because of course, when you mark a tank when it's just been buffed, the requirements haven't caught up yet. These requirements will increase, and it will get harder to 3-mark these tanks, but you can play with the new statistics with the old requirements if you play early into a patch cycle after vehicles have just been buffed. And these tanks, I think if I'd focused on them, I still would have been able to 3-mark them in their previous states, but it kind of just was content for me, for the stream, to go and see what the new buffs were all about. And yeah, it was fun to 3-mark 3 classic tanks all in one day, starting from about 90% on each. So I'm of conflicted opinion, and that is that these tanks, I don't think they were, should we say, the least powerful tank destroyers. I think they're all actually pretty good tanks at their tier. And if we go and take a look at how their relative tank performance was of all of these tank destroyers, Wargaming decided to buff the Object 704, which, to be fair, is lower mid with regards to win ratio. They buffed the T30, which I'd say is kind of more upper mid, and they buffed the Jagdtiger, which is mid. But what does Wargaming expect when they buff these vehicles? There's no doubt that their win ratio difference and their overall raw win ratio will improve. But what I'm concerned about is the way that Wargaming have buffed all of these tanks. Every single one of these vehicles received an engine power increase, and the 704 also received a top speed increase, while the T30 got a reverse speed increase, right? Wargaming seemed to just want to make the game faster and faster and faster. And do we really need to have tank destroyers that are now as fast as old medium tanks in the game that also have, you know, crazy camo rating because of that final field mod on this vehicle, and also really big guns and decent damage per minute to boot? At a time when there's probably too many tank destroyers in the matchmaker, did we really need to have 3 different TD lines buffed? Well, that's only an opinion. Well, it is an opinion, right? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. Do I see these 3 tanks breaking the game because of the buffs that they've had? No, I don't think they're going to be breaking the game because of the buffs that they've had. Will this undoubtedly make the game faster and encourage more and more people to play tank destroyers at a time when we probably need a few less tank destroyers inside the game? Yes, it will. And yeah, if there's one thing I'd suggest to wargaming, is that all this is really going to do is just create power creep in the game and lead to the overall degradation of the game length. And I think that's something that wargaming need to focus on, and I'd really like to see them address in the future. Anyway, these vehicles, all bangers. I recommend all of them. If you're a good player, you will do well in each one of these newly buffed tier 9s. Anyway, that's it for today, ladies and gents, boys and girls. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know what you think about wargaming buffing so many tier 9 tank destroyers that maybe didn't need a buff. Do you think it's all a little bit of fun and nice to have these classic tanks having a little bit of light shown on them? Or do you think this is going to just result in power creep and the overall degradation of the game? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.